On the day of the solar eclipse, I am here to tell you about the re release of Stanley Kubrick's premiere feature film, Fear and Desire, in 4K. Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side. Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Airy. Welcome to my StudioJake vidcast where I talk about all things pop culture. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you'd like to support the channel. Check out my locals, the link is in the description. Yes, it's true. Stanley Kubrick is one of my all-time favorite directors. He directed my favorite horror film of all time, that being The Shining, and of course, many of him know The Paths of Glory. They know Full Metal Jacket, and of course, 2001: A Space Odyssey, as well as A Clockwork Orange. He is a very prolific, or was, I should say, a very prolific film director, writer, cinematographer. He did a lot of stuff and wore many hats. But his first film was Fear and Desire, and it was actually a film that Stanley Kubrick himself grew to despise. And it's such a shame, too, because he had just come off the success of three short films when he did his first feature-length film in 1952, I believe, over 70 years ago. And it's really, like I said, it's really sad. Now, after watching the film, I can see the reaction because he did it on such a low budget. I've heard anywhere between 10,000 to 52,000. Apparently, he originally wanted it to be a silent film, but then last minute decided to make it a a sound film, but then that raised the cost. So it could have been anywhere between 10,000 and 50,000, whatever it is. But he shot it himself. He used a baby carriage instead of one of those camera arms to shoot shots. And in my personal opinion, the story is good, but it is kind of edited very choppy. Sometimes the music's too loud. You can't hear the dialogue between the characters. And the gist of the plot is it's four soldiers in an unknown war who are trapped behind enemy lines. We don't know what side they're on. Obviously they're Americans, so they could be in the American army. And basically, their plane crashes 6 miles behind enemy lines. They have to get back home. They decide to build a raft to try to go down a river, even though it's kind of close to a base, a small base where a general's office is. Well, then an airplane flies over them and they panic and they think they've been spotted. So they kind of debate what to do. They philosophize about war and they end up capturing a local girl, and one of the men goes crazy and kills her, and this kind of makes them debate what their next step is. Now, I don't want to give any spoilers away because it's available for free. You can watch it on YouTube, both versions, because he released the full version, which is about 70 minutes, to a bunch of film festivals. And early on, those critics really liked it, but the distributors decided to bill it as an art house film just because of how it was, the inner monologue of the men who are doing the marching. And it when it went to standard theaters, it kind of got more bad reviews, so he cut it and tried to make it more of a standard war film, although with still some of the initial philosophizing about the nature of war and how it hurts all sides and there's innocent people on both sides, that kind of thing. I saw the original theatrical version first because what happened was it was rediscovered because Stanley Kubrick was so hurt by the negative reviews. He actually tried to, what people call, memory hole it, and he tried to hide cuts of it. He would go to theaters and get them all. That no one really knows what he did with the copies that he confiscated, but a working print of the theatrical version was actually found, I believe, in Puerto Rico, and they donated it to the Library of Congress, who put it in the public domain. This was long after Stanley Kubrick had passed away, by the way, and so you can see it on YouTube now. Just a few years ago, someone actually found the original cut, which everyone thought was just lost. It was considered a lost film for many years, the original cut of Fear and Desire. It also was put in the public domain. The Library of Congress actually highlighted it since it was Stanley Kubrick's first work, even though it's a largely imperfect film. And it ended up being restored. And like I said at the onset of this video, some people have worked really hard to restore it and turn it into a 4K film. So this is according to Movie Web. Stanley Kubrick's final film was 25 years ago, so if you're missing his brilliance, now is a good time to go back 70 years and revisit his very first film. The allegorical film Fear and Desire was quietly released in 1953. Oh, I said 1952. My bad. And performed poorly. Kubrick cut nearly 10 minutes from the film in a futile attempt to try and make it more popular. According to star Paul Mazursky, who later became a great director in his own right, Stanley tried to have the negative burned. He hated the movie. And for a while, Fear and Desire was only available in bootleg editions, but it was restored last year and is now in 4K on streaming. So that's really cool that, even though he tried to scrub pretty much the beginning of his career, that people have found it and have recognized it for the piece of cinema history that it is. So, continue on. Upon its initial release, Kubrick was stung by negative audience reactions and immediately decided to tone down the philosophical aspects of the film. These edits made the film less of a metaphysical experience and more of a conventional war film. For decades, this 62-minute version was all that existed of Fear and Desire until the Library of Congress came into possession of a 35mm element of the original 70-minute premiere cut, which has not been seen since its interrupted theatrical run in 1953. Now we can finally see Fear and Desire as it was first released and witnessing the blossoming of a 23-year-old cinematic genius. So you can see it. Like I said, you can see the film for free here on YouTube, but you can stream it in 4K on Prime Video, Vudu, Google Play, Apple TV, and not to mention you can get the DVD, which I always recommend. Get physical media, buy physical media. It is important because movie studios are working overtime to edit out or relabel or even insert advertising into movies, which I find absolutely disgusting. So it is important to get physical media if you can get your hands on original works. Heck, even go back to VHSs for things like the original Star Wars cut, right? Sometimes you have to go back that far. To my knowledge, the original Star Wars cut has never been released on DVD. If I'm wrong about that, would someone please correct me in the comments? Because I've never been able to track one down other than bootleg copies, which I don't support bootlegging, by the way, or piracy. By the way, if you hear some grunting, that's my dog. He's in here while I'm filming. So maybe I'll do a dog cam or something, but he's not happy that he's in here while I'm filming my vidcast. Nonetheless, I'm very excited that this film has been restored and has been brought to 4K. Like I said, I've seen the original theatrical cut when it was released on YouTube. So, yes, it's not a perfect film, but I don't see it as this film was a failure. This is merely the first step of a genius's career. And not every genius is going to be perfect right off the bat. That's just not how life works. But Stanley Kubrick, like I said, he went on to become one of my favorite film directors. He directed my favorite horror film, as I mentioned earlier, The Shining, which is brilliant. I don't care what the author of the novel it's based on says. I find that film to be genius. I think it's fantastic. Same with 2001: A Space Odyssey, even though the ending does confuse me, like it confuses a lot of people. But I still find it a very interesting look into just how mankind chooses to explore our over reliance on technology and what it could mean if we're not the only ones out there in the world. Or in the universe, I should say. So I'm really glad that more cinephiles like myself, by the way, that just means a fan of films. Anyway, uh, I'm glad that a whole new generation of cinephiles will be able to see this film, this precursor to the greatness that Stanley Kubrick would bring to us on the silver screen. They'll get to see it in all of its glory and all of its early stages and get to hopefully develop an appreciation for Kubrick and his work as I have. Like I said at the onset, I won't say Stanley Kubrick is my all-time favorite director, but he is definitely one of them, and I think his films are fantastic. Even some of the ones I don't really care for, I still recognize that he is a cinematic masterpiece in every shape and form. So I'm very excited that Fear and Desire is now streaming on 4K. I'm excited you can get it physically. So definitely, if you can, track it down, find it, get it, add it to your collection, as I plan to do.
'cause I've been living life